what do you do when you're confronted with information that may cause you to question what may have been a solidly held belief or idea? What do you do?
Hi babes, Lady Silverstone here, and welcome to my podcast, where we're trying to demystify cannabis, one conversation at a time. In this episode, we're talking about why some of us resist to social change, finding the silver lining through the chaos, and saving the world with our guest today. She's the creator of Cannababery, a brand that curates cannabis accessories for women in the US. As a black woman herself, she engages in supporting black women entrepreneurs and artists through her monthly boxes, like Ave Rivera Studio or Naturalannie. You might also have seen her in the Dope Women and Weed events. Let's welcome Katie. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, darling.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
So nice to see you.
You too.
Love this.
I started to get dressed up and then I was like...
You're like, no. So first, I want to thank you so much for joining my podcast. I know it's a bit early in the morning for you, but I guess it's fine.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super fun. So actually I don't know if I found you or you found me on Instagram, but we started talking.
I would almost imagine that I found you simply because when I first started that Instagram page, I was promoting, but it was all pre-launch. So I didn't have any product. I didn't have anything at that time. And so I was like trying to find people in the industry that I could, communicate with and talk to. Because in Connecticut, where I live, it's medical only.
Okay.
So I've been trying to reach out to people that can talk freely. And I think that's how I came across your page. Either someone like posted like, oh, go check this post out. And it might have been like something about terpenes, but I found you somehow.
No, so nice. And I actually received one of your really beautiful strain trackers, which is so nice.
Yes.
It's so funny how I never thought about like noting those things down before.
It comes from my background. So I've kind of always been like a note taker and I've always loved stationery. And the first time I got like a professional, like actual planner, probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And I've been using like a paper planner ever since. So for me, taking notes and things is what I do. So in my head, I'm like, okay, this strain feels very different than the last one. And I started making notes, and in a conversation with a friend of mine, she was like, wait, why don't you make a journal for it? And I was like, say no more. And I think I went home that night and like had it, a template set. And I probably printed my first strain tracker within like 3 or 4 days of that conversation. And I think I might have sent one to you within 2 or 3 weeks of deciding I was going to make it a thing. So I'm glad you got one.
Really? Was that early?
Yeah, you were one of the first 5 people to have one.
Oh, I feel very honored.
You're OG, yeah, for sure.
Oh, love it. So in your state, only medical cannabis is legal, but is it decriminalized?
It's decriminalized, but as is the case, I think the world is seeing in the news, things are legalized, but the people in those places, it's almost as if the authorities didn't get the memo sometimes. Like I had to go to court for like a traffic violation, and I guess they handled, everything in that one courtroom. And there was a guy getting fined for having an ounce on him. And I'm like, seriously? They made him pay like $400 and then do all this other stuff. And I'm just sitting here, me and this guy, like we're sitting there looking at each other like, really? Yeah. The world sees what's going on. So it's unfortunate. But it upsets me. I'm like, that him getting fined $400 shouldn't be a thing when I could have been like worked at parties for the rich and famous and wealthy in Connecticut, and they're smoking out in the open in their backyard without fear.
Exactly. And much more than smoking, probably.
I've seen some things. It's like, we got our non-disclosure agreement, so I can't go into details, but I've seen things where it's like, if this were a party in my neighborhood, the cops would have been called hours ago. Like, what is this? Everyone should have that freedom, but it is what it is for now. We're fighting for legalization. Before, all of the craziness of 2020, it was supposedly on the table that they were going to legalize this year. And I have to look into like where that stands because I haven't heard anything.
Because now that's maybe not like a priority for the state.
I would imagine it's not. We were hard hit with COVID, in part because we're like considered a satellite state for New York. So,
what is that? Sorry, what?
A satellite state for New York.
Oh, what does that mean?
It means that we have a large population of people that commute there. They call it the corridor, like the Fairfield County corridor. So the train line runs directly from New York into Connecticut all the way up to where I live in New Haven, which is like 2.5-hour train ride from New York. But all along that line, people who work in the area, they've been basically COVID kind of came up from the South for us. And it was, really in relation to New York and people traveling back and forth. So I don't think it's high on anybody's list, pun intended. We'll see what happens. It's not stopping near anybody else I know because, we feel the way we feel about it. We don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's weird. Like I've encountered people who are on pain medications and had issues with pain medication, family members who, we found out after the fact were doing weird things with their medicine. And it's like, I would have much rather you just smoked weed. Like I really would have, because the health fallouts from all that stuff is disgusting. Like it's awful. Unless I'm going to a dispensary, it's considered illegal for me to buy cannabis. Like it's crazy. It's insane, but that's how it is in Connecticut.
I saw this article about this, like, I don't know, he was like 85, an 85-year-old guy who like survived COVID and now has like a $1.5 million like bill, like hospital bill. How is that possible?
Yeah. So, my boyfriend works in the EMS services, so emergency medical services, and he was telling me like, if anything ever happens, he's like, as long as I'm not dying, he's like, don't call an ambulance. It's like, put me in a car and we live close enough to the hospital. Like, because I think the second you step foot and they start driving, it's like minimum $1,000. It's like a ride in an ambulance will, I'd say on average, cost you about $1,000. Everything's expensive. I went to the hospital for like a gallbladder issue, and I was in there for a few hours, and I got like maybe a shot or two of morphine while I was there. And, they checked my blood pressure, but like very basic care and very hands-off. And the bill's almost $4,000. I was in the hospital for less than 12 hours. Like I said, I had 2 shots of morphine, no interaction outside of that. And it's like, how much does morphine cost? You could have given me like 1,600 milligrams of ibuprofen if that were the case.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'm like, $4,000 for what?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people, like everybody I talk to that doesn't live in America is just like, how can you afford to do anything?
I really think so. I'm like, and I am a bit, what do you call it? Hypochondriacal.
Okay.
I'm like, I could never live in the US.
Am I sick? I should probably go to the doctor. And it's like, do you really want to do that? Do you want to pay that copay? And God forbid you don't have insurance. Like, there's payment plans and things like that. It's not like they're beating down your door for that money, but you're on the hook for that money.
That's the thing.
What if my only other option was death?
That's exactly.
I wonder how many people have to come to that. It's like this treatment, which could save my life or, end my pain or, whatever the case may be. This treatment, okay, pay for that or put aside money for that. But will you be able to do anything else after or before, while you're recuperating? It's insane.
For me, just thinking to have thousands of dollars in the back of my head all the time, knowing that I have that to pay back. Yeah, it's a big stress.
It just hangs over you. And the thing that's unfortunate, it only gets worse. Like the more you talk about it, sometimes I talk about stuff and I'm like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Because the more we talk about it, the worse it's just going to get. But it's like, your medical debt, say you don't pay back that institution within X amount of time, they then sell that debt to a credit card or a debt collector. And the debt collector paid more often than not like pennies on the dollar. So like you may owe the company or the hospital $4,000, and a debt collection agency can buy it for $400 and then continue to pursue you for $4,000. And it's like, if you're able to sell my debt for that cheap, then the debt's not real, like you made those numbers up out of somewhere, because if you're okay as an institution taking less than that and giving that burden to someone else, obvious disconnect there, right?
And it's a 10-time difference.
Maybe not like 1-to-1 or like a 10 times difference, but it ends up being like cents on the dollar, generally speaking. So yeah, it's crazy.
Do you think that what's going on in the States now, both with COVID, but also like the whole movement of Black Lives Matter, do you think that might be a spark?
It definitely is, because I think people, especially from the outside looking in, and when I say the outside looking in, I mean people who are both non-white. And for your listeners who don't know who I am Black, light-skinned Black, but from the outside looking in, being non-Black, you can only see and understand but so much because you don't have the experience. And then from the outside looking in, as far as countries go, I think the world over, the general agreement is that healthcare in the US isn't great. The unfortunate thing is that Black Lives Matter is really being pushed, and in media in this country, gearing it more towards like, they'll say just very general, like it's against police brutality and defund the police and yada, yada, yada. And being the person that I am and having all the interests that I have, Black and a planner, Black and a woman who is cannabis, has a business that's cannabis adjacent, Black and a nerd, all these intersections of Black and all the things that I like and the industries that I work in, everyone is standing up in their industry and saying that this isn't right. And in the medical, industry, it's very much the same thing. You'll read stories about doctors just who have done terrible things. It blows my mind. There was a story of a doctor who was working on a woman. She's Black, her husband's white, and they might have been well-to-do, like well off. And she had a baby, was almost at home with no painkillers whatsoever. Again, almost as if they thought she was like faking about her pain. And then when she went back for a checkup, she'd had a cesarean. So the nurses were checking her scars, and like they were all in shock at how well her scar had healed. And she was like, well, I would hope that would be the doctor's aim, to have a patient who's satisfied with his surgical skill. And they were like, no, it's not that. He usually does a terrible staple job on brown women. And I was just like, oh my God, so much rage over something like that. I think about my mom, like my mom has 8 kids and I'm the oldest. And I just think about like the medical care. Like as a kid, you don't think about any of that kind of stuff. But I wonder in retrospect, like, was my mother treated differently? As a kid, you're not looking for that. But like, was my mother treated differently when she was in the hospital with any and all of us? You read like old textbooks from like as recently as like the 80s, 90s, and in some unfortunate cases like the early 2000s, where they talk about pain tolerance and cultural differences amongst people, which you should take into consideration in the medical field, but it shouldn't take that into consideration. And also under Black people, like they may be prone to exaggerate their pain, or they don't feel pain the same way that other people do. And it's just like, where do you get this information from?
Yeah, can I please see the study of this?
Right? And then I would question where that study was done and the validity of it. The whole medical system in the US, unfortunately, or large portions of it when it comes to medical breakthroughs and treatments and things. There's a woman who was experimented on by a white doctor, and, he kept her cells and stuff, and the tests and things that they did on her and her cells are the basis for so many medical innovations. And it's like her family has not been compensated. And so it's like knowing all of the awful things that happened. Gynecology, they were experimenting on Black women and their bodies, and all of that stuff is the basis for the medical system. And so that stuff is carried over, and it's carried over into, cannabis. And so, yeah, Black Lives Matter is meant to be that spark, because it's not just that, we're treated unfairly or in a biased way by police, or that we have a higher rate of chance of being killed, in a police interaction. It's not just that, it's me being in the planner community and seeing companies that I used to patron, like, basically say, that's not my problem. Oh, well, too bad. Or, Black Lives Matter, they're a bunch of thugs, they're a bunch of this, that, the other, and the third. To hear these things, it's like, what year do we live in? And also, it's everywhere. It's not just the police. It's everywhere. And I think I think some people are scared because they're realized that the problem's not as isolated or as, contained to one industry. It's not Black people against the police. It really feels like on any given day, Black people against the world. It's like, what did we do? What did we do to y'all? Nothing.
Yeah.
I would say with Black Lives Matter, as far as cannabis goes, there's so many different organizations that are working to provide legal aid for those who've been incarcerated for nonviolent cannabis crimes, different legislation going into place so that they can have these records thrown out. Like a couple of states in the past week, I'd say at least 3 or 4 that I've read about and can't remember them off the top of my head. But there's been a few states in the past week or so where they've decided to take convictions and things like that for nonviolent marijuana offenses. And in some states, they'll put a cap on how much you had in your possession and stuff. But they're starting to expunge and throw those records and things out, which is good. But it's we still have a long way to go, because there's still over 40,000 Black individuals who are incarcerated for nonviolent marijuana crimes. And so it's
that is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. And for them to do research in the US, and for those people who have, openly admitted to smoking marijuana, when they do those numbers, the breakdown, if you're just looking Black versus white, is almost 50-50. So it's if that's the case, then there's something going on here that's, untoward. There's clearly a disparity.
It's not like white kids are just better at hiding. That is not the issue.
It's not. No. And again, working in some of these affluent cities, knowing other people who work in these affluent cities, I've heard stories oh yeah, I'm teaching these kids and they're talking about all these wild parties they had over the weekend and the cops got called. It's their parents, one, if the area has a reputation to protect, and to an extent, I wouldn't even say to an extent, I would honestly just say outright, the police help protect the reputation of an area. And if it's not that, then their parents have money to pay who they need to pay, or tell whoever they need to tell, either mind your business or, F off. I've been to plenty of parties with people who are, on this board and on that board, and, and at parent functions. And again, I'm not going to say, if you have kids, you shouldn't smoke cannabis. No, that's definitely not what's going on here. But the idea that, these people who are successful, who are wealthy, who are parents, who are this, who are that, who are whatever, smoking cannabis. It's why is it not that you see that and it's oh, okay, so you can be a successful stoner, quote unquote. You can smoke marijuana and, remember all your clients' names, or whatever the case may be. It's unfortunate that that's not the way it's viewed. It's all that stuff's kind of swept under the rug. And then you have inner city kids, unfortunately, mostly Black and brown, getting, hemmed up for, having a joint on them, or, having whatever. It doesn't make any sense. And the unfortunate thing is, it's you have this set of knowledge. It's where do I even go? What do I do with it? Because if I, the layperson, know this, the people in government, the people in, the police departments, the people, in power, they know. So it's what do I do with this information? Because clearly it's not being, used appropriately. So I think Black Lives Matter is the spark for a lot of change in a lot of different industries.
Sorry for interrupting. I hope you enjoy listening so far. Please check out my account Lady Silverstone at patreon.com so I can continue creating cannabis content for you. And in a lot of different countries as well. We can see even, so for example, in Indonesia, where I was living before, there's a lot of racism there as well. The whiter you are, the more respect you get, basically. While my husband, for example, he's native Indonesian with dark skin who like to be on the beach with me and stay in the sun and so on. And it's considered as a bad thing. They're like, no, get out of the sun. Don't destroy your skin. Don't do this. Don't do that, you know. So in Indonesia, it's made up of a lot of different islands. And then you have Papua, which is a huge island where they are a bit darker skinned than like the rest of Indonesia. And also they have a lot of tribes, so they don't have these like, let's say in Indonesia, you're allowed to have like 6 religions. You cannot be an atheist and you cannot be a Jew. You can be like Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Taoist. So they are already very discriminated like there. So you cannot say that, no, but I'm from this tribe and I believe in this and that, you know? No, it's like discriminative already there, but also the fact that they look so much different from the rest. And now there's a lot of Indonesian youngsters specifically, you know, like our generation and younger, that are really taking like this Black Lives Matter and like put it on like their issues, which is amazing to see that every country, I think, in the world, whether there are many African countries as well that has this exact same issues, which is horrible. So I think it's really amazing how it started like over in the US and it just spread globally, like, you know.
It's beautiful to see the awareness. And again, I think some people are scared because they're realizing it's not as isolated as they thought. I think a lot of people are like, well, you know, after segregation and after, you know, Jim Crow and all that stuff was over, everything's fine, right? And it's like the laws changed. Laws don't change people's mind. It changed what it is for them to legally do, you know, in the public eye. It doesn't change people's hearts. It doesn't change the way that they think. And so it's like, yes, all these things were done away with, but the attitudes remained. And, you know, they got rid of one set of rules, but then put in a whole new set of rules or requirements that made it a little bit harder for Black and brown people, you know? It's like, if my case in point, I can't use my best friend because they're white, but they're technically immigrants, so they had a hardship all their own. But I have friends who are, you know, they're well off, they're well to do. They've come from money, and you hear them talk about their grandparents, and my grandfather used to do this, and then, you know, he taught my father how to do that, and then he got him a job. And so many people don't understand that the rules changed, but the way people were treated did not. And so it was like, you know, their grandparent went to, you know, this prominent college, and they have, you know, this fraternity that, you know, has now helped uplift the family over generations. You know, the grandson and the son go into this fraternity, and, you know, and then they all work together and they have this hedge fund, and that generational wealth is tied hand in hand with racism. Not to say that people shouldn't have money or pass money down to their children, but with that money comes access that I don't have. And while it may be, yes, your family has money, race played a part in that, because I guarantee you that they had counterparts who were Black that couldn't go to college, you know, and it's like they had to work manual labor. And then, you know, their kids are coming up and they're worried about their kids' future. And in their mind, they're like, college isn't an option. Like, you have to go work. So there is, unfortunately, and I've said this to a lot of people, within the Black community, within Black families, you know, there's a lot of impetus on having skills that are marketable, skills that, you know, you can go out and get a job. You have to have a good job. And, you know, it instills, because of their experience, grandparents' experience, because of parents' experience, it instills in them that they have to have this, you know, they have to go do work. It wasn't their first thought to go start a company or to research this idea and make this product, you know. It just, bills needed to be paid. And when bills need to be paid, you don't have a lot of time for...
And you don't have a lot of choice.
Yeah, you don't. I have to go pay these bills. You know, I have to go take care of this stuff. versus someone saying, I've got your room and board, I've got your, I'll pay for everything. Go out in the world and experience this and do that and learn this. And when you get back after all of that, I'll pay for your school. And then I'll talk to my boss, or I'll talk to my boss's friend, and we'll get you a job somewhere. It's like, we don't have that. Or if we have that, it's like, yeah, I'll talk to my friend and you'll be an apprentice at, a garage somewhere working on cars. It's just a big circle. It's a conversation that is obviously being had around the world. There's a lot of different things that need to be addressed, for sure. Like you were talking about, like in Indonesia, how that's an issue for them. So it's like, even amongst any group, there's divisions, unfortunately. So it's for them, it's racism / colorism, like the whole idea of being like lighter skinned. It's a thing. Like I've said to people, I understand that my experiences with racism and racial issues is not the same as my boyfriend's who's darker than me, or my mother's who's darker than me. And I've had people say to me, like, they thought I was either mixed, which is like a thing that's kind of like fetishized in America. Either that I was mixed, or in some cases, because I speak Spanish the way I speak Spanish, Hispanic passing or Spanish passing, Spanish speaker passing. So I know my experience isn't the same as somebody else's. And people just don't see that or don't want to see it. But the more it's put out there, I think the more people keep it up. That's the thing. It's like a lot of people mention, Black Lives Matter has been around for about 4 or 5 years now. And it's picking up now because more people are stepping up. But it's like, we can't make this loud exclamation that Black Lives Matter and basically go to dismantle, systemic racism across all industries and then fall silent. So now it's like, the work is picking up and it's tiring, but I think some good will come of it. I really do.
I do think so too. And I do think that even though COVID is very unfortunate in itself, but I do think that because we were all sitting home, most of us, many people lost their jobs, unfortunately, and we just had to like deal with this thing like in our faces,
Distraction was taken away, yeah, and a lot of things came to light.
That's the thing.
In case of that.
Yeah. So I think it was a good timing in a way. If it can be a good timing. Do you see what I mean?
In a weird way. Silver linings. Always find your silver lining. COVID, yes. Quarantine, yes. All those things, unfortunate. Me personally, it's like, yeah, it's been bad. I've had family members who have had it. Fortunately, everyone's recovered. But for all the bad things, it's like, for me personally, again, I'll speak from my own experience, it's been a lot of good. An opportunity to get creative, not only in the way that you reach out and connect with people, but, in the way that you get your day-to-day done, changed. You had to plan and prep just a little bit more, which is what I'm all about anyway. So I was like, yeah, this is fine. But for me personally, what was taken out of play was this anxiety and this rush to always be trying to find work and money.
Yeah.
I would want to sit down and work on a project or make something. And when I say make, like I sew, I knit, I crochet, I do my digital design and stuff. I'm a crafter, I'm a maker.
Yeah.
I always felt bad doing those things. Because it's like, if I have time to do this, then should I be at work? Should I have picked up a shift? And then so it's like, I could never fully realize, or I do something. And then even now I still get a little bit timid about pushing and promoting myself and my product. But it's like the need to leave the house, to go find money, that was taken away.
Yeah.
I was able to qualify for unemployment and be home and, really work out my ideas, which was great. And you see me posting and everything, and I'm working hard, and it's like, I'm not rolling in dough and I'm not making a ton of money. It's time to set a foundation.
Yeah.
That will hopefully catapult me to the next level. So for all of the awful things that we've had to deal with because of COVID and quarantine, there's been some good things. I got a garden now.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, I've got a garden on my porch. So we've got like beets and beans and lettuce, spinach. I got a couple things back there.
Did you also start that like during COVID? Because for me, that's what I did. I'm like, shit, I'm stuck in here with like nothing alive. I'm like, I need to plant stuff. you know?
I grew up with a grandfather who planted and had a garden and everything. So that was like always in the back of my head. We tried last year, and because of our schedules and just everything being crazy, we weren't able to get our garden past like seedling stage. And at that point, I was like, I'm frustrated and I don't want to try. This year, it was like, okay, I want to plant. I have time to think about how and where, because we live in a second floor apartment. We don't have ground access, nor do I think my landlord wants us, tearing up his, his lawn for a garden. But I had time to really like plan out. So I was like, I'll have something. It may not be a super abundance, but I'll have something at the end of the season. And, thanks COVID and quarantine for that. I tried, I had my own plant, my beautiful little, what was it? Cannabis caviar plant. And I put my heater on either too high or for too long. So I have a little greenhouse in my office because I'm like, I don't want to leave that on the porch. And I look over and I can see the plant. I'm working and I look over and I don't see it. And I'm like,
no way.
Are my eyes playing tricks on me? And I opened up the flap.
Am I high again?
Right. And I was like, I'm definitely not. What is going on right now? And it had shriveled up.
Oh no.
And I'm like, 2 months of hard work down the drain.
Did it have time to start flowering or was...
No, fortunately not. I would have been big mad. I would have been really upset. So I kept it. I let it dry out. I'm probably going to steep it for tea. And then I started 2 more. They're still seedlings. I actually need to repot them. I'll probably do them today. But yeah, it's probably going to be another 4 months. I keep telling my friends locally, hey, if you guys have any clippings, I'll take them. Hey, you guys gonna clone anything? And everybody's like, oh yeah, but nobody's giving up the goods. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, but no, they're like, but I'm keeping my sticklings for myself.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I'm like, listen, just one little slice off the side for me, but I'll take what I get. I'll take what I can get.
I should have asked you before, but I got caught in the conversation. So for the listeners to understand the context, can you please give me a full-on introduction of who Katie is and what you're doing? So background and present time.
Oh God. It's I hate to talk about myself.
We don't do that too often though, so please.
I don't. And I just had to write a piece for a magazine about myself, and I probably wrote 10 other people's before I wrote mine. It took me the longest to write my own. So so I'm KD. I am the owner of the Cannababery, which is a website, online head shop geared towards women. And I also provide a monthly, I wouldn't say sub box because I took the subscription part out of it, but a monthly canna box for geared towards women. And the idea is that on the website and in the box, I will have accessories that are geared towards women, but not any particular type of woman, just things that women like or things that women think about. I've come to, learn that men and women both consume cannabis, but there are different nuances. And so I try to play into, the nuance and the care for accessories and materials that we consume cannabis with. And the other idea is to bring in other small businesses, specifically women owned and specifically, Black owned when I can find, that again, that intersection of Black and insert word. So yeah, that's what I do. I've been smoking cannabis for 2 to 2.5 years. And I started recreationally and, for relaxation, for fun, out of curiosity. But when I first started to like smoke regularly, like every day, I kind of kept it a secret.
Even for your boyfriend?
He smokes. And he smokes for years. And my first introduction was not with him, but my first like regular, like once a week smoke was with him. But when I like really decided, I was like, I really want to try this. I kept it a secret simply because I didn't want him to think I was doing it like to people please or fit in. I also wanted to make sure it was something that I liked in the absence of people. It's like, am I doing this because I like doing it with this person? Am I doing it because I want to please this person? Like, do I really enjoy myself? So I think the first 3 months, like I went and bought my pipe in secret at a nice glass shop in Connecticut. Like I went and bought my pipe by myself, and I got some hemp when I was there. So I was like doing both, and I'd smoke every night, and then I'd like kind of sit on my couch and just experience all those emotions. So, I had to break past the paranoia and all of that stuff. Like I did all that stuff by myself because I really needed to make sure it was something that I liked. But yeah, I've been smoking for about 2.5 years.
Yeah, you needed to but like make your own relationship with it as well.
Yes. And that's where it went from being just recreational to me really realizing that certain things made me feel a certain way. Like I smoke this and super paranoid, and then I buy a new eighth and then I smoke it, and it's like now I'm just sitting on the couch laughing to myself, like noticing those differences. So that's kind of what brought on me deciding to do the Cannababery, everything local as far as like head shops and stuff go. It's like all, Rastafarian and Rick and Morty, and it's like I like those things, but my taste is as eclectic as anything. So, one day I want my pretty sleek, black pipe. And the next day I've got this, crazy swirl piece. And some days I want papers and, I want pretty pink papers. And some days I want flavor. I like a variety of things. And so I'm trying to cater to every woman that smokes cannabis and, you to be able to find things that are appealing to you. I don't think you should use anything that doesn't draw you to it. There's the function of things, and so you use things because you need them. But it's like if I'm going to use something because I need it, I better like the way it looks. I better like the way it feels. So that's what started the Cannababery. It was like trying to find a way to pull together all of my eclectic tastes and know that there's a woman out there who's going to want something that I like. And just trying to get all of that together.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like your newest box that you have, because you have like a Black women box, complete, right?
Yep. I just got the last confirmation. So this box, my first box, just by chance, my first box has 2 Black-owned small businesses, both women, and they're friends of mine. Like they live local, and one is familiar with cannabis, may have experienced cannabis. The other is not, but they're both makers, and so I could talk to them like, "Hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. Can you help me with this?" So one friend provided the lip balms that are in the first box, and then the handmade ashtray. That was made by my friend locally as well. So again, 2 small Black-owned, female-owned businesses. The Black Cannabis Matters box was something that kind of like popped into my head with the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Again, thinking about the intersectionality of Black people and, outside of the stereotypes that may be promoted in the media, it's like we have varied interests like any other group of people. So that's when I was like, you know what? It's been talked about again on social media, the racism and disparity that exists even in the cannabis community and in the cannabis industry. So I was like, I want to find all of the Black owned businesses, all the Black female owned businesses, Black makers who are either in cannabis or cannabis adjacent. And that's when I came up with the idea for Black Cannabis Matters. So if you see that green and white graphic, it's mine. Tag me. I made the mistake of posting it and not watermarking it. and it's popping up in little places, and I'm like, that's not the person. Okay. So it's like, I'm trying to let go. I'm like, you know what, just let it be the movement that it is. If it gets away from me and I don't get credit, cool, fine. It's more so about the idea that more and more people are saying, yeah, Black Lives Matter and Black cannabis matters. But that box will be, the first one will either be shipping, it's going to be shipping in July. But I just got the second confirmation for the makers. So I'm going to have CBD in this box by a Black-owned, female-owned company. And I'm going to have candles in this box by a Black-owned, female-owned company. So that's going to be really fun. Again, that first box will ship next month. But then I decided to make it like a perpetual box. So it's a box I will always have. And a new version will come out maybe every month, every few months, and I'll introduce different makers and switch things out. So each box will have its own, each edition or each version of the Black Cannabis Matters box will have its own something about it that's special. But I'm really excited. It's been a lot of fun. It's been very eye-opening. It's one of those things where I feel like I've kind of like found my niche. The whole Black Lives Matter movement has, really, I don't want to say called people out, because that sounds bad. And it's not bad to say to someone or an industry or a company, like, we're realizing that something's not adding up here. With all of that going on, it's like, what do I, as a Black person, as a Black woman, what do I do? What do I offer? Where do I fit into all of this? And for me, it's like art activism and consumer activism are my lanes. It's like, I won't be at a rally and I won't be on the front lines. And that's not because I don't think those are valid forms of expression and ways that will actually make change. I'm, compromised, and the issues that I have, is like, I can't be on the front line. That's not my place. But what I can do is direct my funds in a way that's going to, help the Black community. I can reach out to others and help them with their businesses to build the Black community. So it's like, that's where I was going. That's where the Black Cannabis Matters box kind of like, that is my role. Like, that's my activism right there. Shining light on, Black and brown individuals, and when I can, specifically women in this industry, because it goes from being a race problem. I think if you were to like list America's issues, I think racism is probably one, and sexism is closely there following. And right, and it's like, I think the sexism and the racism kind of is the basis for like all the other issues that we have in cannabis and medical and everywhere else.
Dear listeners, if you like what you hear, please check out my Patreon. The link is in the description here below. Only if you're able to, of course. Now, let's get back to our guest. How are we gonna save the world, babe?
A day at a time. A day at a time.
You're like, ooh, stop stressing now.
It's a thing I think about. I try to imagine like what, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, what they felt like when the world was felt like it was burning around them. And it's like, again, like if you look back at like my page, if I happen to like slide my details from my other business like to you, and you look at my posts, it's like I just stopped in my tracks. I like to use social media. I don't like to post about myself. I don't like to talk about myself. I have a hard time making myself seem like something, It's like, can you tell them how great I am for me? Because I don't want to say it. It sounds weird when I say it.
I know. Yeah. It's like the imposter syndrome is like hitting like so hard. I know.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel like I read about that and I like had to check myself. I was like, wait, is that what it is? And after I was like, no, it's not imposter syndrome. It's not that. It's just, I don't know. I don't want to be perceived the wrong way.
Yeah.
You wonder. And I've also realized like that's also related to racism. It's weird. Like a person doesn't want to be perceived any negative way, but it's like myself personally, like dealing with the idea and the stigma of like, I don't want to be the angry Black woman, and I don't want to be automatically written off because I'm the sassy Black girl, and I don't want to be your token Black friend or your token Black employee either. So it's like, it's a very interesting time, and I just try to imagine like how they felt. It's like, how do we save the world? And it's like, I'm having a hard time seeing past today, because it's like you wake up and it's like, okay, all of this has happened in the past few weeks, and you wake up and you hope that you hear something good, or you hope you see change in the positive direction, but you also wake up with the realization that like you could wake up and something worse could happen than has already happened. And so it's like, how do we save the world? It's like a day at a time, because trying to foresee what's coming sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes you make things worse. trying to see, it's like,
And it's also the fact that like you want things to go fast, right? So for me, I'm like, I want cannabis to be fully legal all over the world, like tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's going to take like 20 years, maybe even more.
And it's upsetting because you see how quickly some like legislation has been enacted recently as a result of these protests. And it's upsetting to think that, yes, things take time. Things take time. You got to go enter the information and then print the paper, and then you got to send it to everyone, and everyone has to talk about it. Things take time. You understand that. But at the same time, it's like you watch them, and them being government officials, legislators, and things like that, you watch them put the things that they want into action swift and in a hurry. And it's like, these things don't have to take a lot of time. You're hoping they take a lot of time, or you're making them take a lot of time because you're hoping the wind goes out of the sails. You hope that people get tired, and it's an uphill battle over rocks and mud, and it's dark outside. That's what it feels like sometimes, but a day at a time. It's a mentality that is a driving force for racism, sexism, and a lot of other things. But this idea that if someone else has, it diminishes the value or importance of myself or what I have. And I think there's a lot of people who, they'll say, oh, well, racism is not as bad, or they're exaggerating, or I don't think racism exists the way that it's made to seem on, the news or on social media. And they try to like downplay it. And I have a best friend who's white, my only best friend, and she is white. And she's dealing with that with some of her family members. Her husband's Black and Puerto Rican. Her kids are going to be brown. And so she's fighting that fight with people she didn't expect to fight that fight with. And I said to her, I was like, some people say, don't level with someone, don't try to reason with them, don't try to understand them. I'm like, no, I think that's important, because not that everybody can be reached or reasoned with, but the people that can be just may need you to take a different approach. And I said to her, I was like, I think a lot of the pushback or a lot of the denial about racism isn't about the treatment of Black people per se and whether or not it's actually happening. I think if people confess or admit that racism is a thing, then we have to do something about it. And I think in doing something about it, people are afraid that the things that they worked hard for, people have pride in, oh, I bought my house and I worked X amount of hours and I did all this backbreaking work and look what I built for my family. And you should have pride in that. But it's not to say that if someone else got a house, say, they talk about reparations and guess basically paying for the trauma that we've still had to endure, generations after racism or not racism, but, slavery was ended. If someone got a house as reparations, that doesn't diminish the value of your house or the importance of your hard work, or it shouldn't change the pride that you had in the way that you acquired your house. And I think that's the thing. I think people are afraid that if laws change, if your reparations, was made an actual thing, I think people are afraid that their way of life is in danger. And so subconsciously, they're willing for another group to be oppressed for them to be able to keep the status. And it's not to say that if everyone's the same, it doesn't lessen your quality of life. But the idea that everyone's at the same quality seems to bother people. And it's weird. It's like,
that is what we've seen since the end of slavery. I think that, okay, now I am generalizing my ass off. So like, bear with me.
I understand. No, you're good.
Bear with me. So I think, this is how I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, so the white men and women, obviously, that had the slaves for so many years, in generations, on their farms, in their houses, and so on. Mm-hmm. When slaves were freed, I think a lot of white people got very fucking scared. Mm-hmm. I think they got very fucking scared because they have never like lifted something in their whole lives. They don't have any muscles. They don't have anything. Do you see what I mean? Like, yeah, the black people, they were out, they were lifting, they were tall, they were, again, generalizing as fuck. But do you see what I mean? I think that they were like, shit, we fucked up. Like, they can like destroy us.
And I think that's what it is.
And I think that's where I think that's why they want to keep this, like, this discrimination just as far as they can, because they're so fucking scared.
Because it serves people. It's, you know, you've seen the memes and stuff, and it's like, you know, America better be happy that Black people only want equality and not revenge. And it's funny because there's obviously, like you said, you're generalizing, and people get upset with generalizations and they nitpick and they're like, well, not everyone's like that. And it's like, you have to understand that generalizations don't apply to everyone. It's like, if you read it and it's a generalization and it doesn't apply to you, then keep moving. This person's making a generalization based on their experience and what they've seen. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. They're just explaining from their point of view something that they've noticed. Is it widespread? Maybe, maybe not. But in a place, it holds some weight. Now, there's bad generalizations. There's generalizations for the sake of observation. Whichever one you're making kind of tilts how I look at it. So yeah, no, your generalizations, I understand where you're coming from. I think it was a matter of they've had free labor for X amount of time, and now they have to pay people to do work. It was also because I was reading up recently, there was something like 20,000 acres in the South that was confiscated from Confederate individuals, individuals living in the Confederacy, that were redistributed to some freedmen. Imagine watching the person who cultivated your land for you, may have taught you things about your land or how to cultivate certain crops, now has their own land. And so it's not just a matter of I have to now pay for labor. It's this person now has everything that I have, or the potential to get what I have. What does it say about me? And I think that's what it is. I don't think people don't want to own up to the fact that their families may have been, a part of, racist practices, or that they benefit, the money that their family may have may be on the backs of Black and brown people. I think it's a little bit of fear too. It's like, well, if they get what they want, then they're going to, nobody is trying to turn around. And a generalization, because I'm sure there's some people out there who are Black and brown who may feel some type of vindictive way. But I would say generally, the majority, if not, I could say all with a small asterisk, and there's probably like a very small percentage, nobody is looking to get anything, to live a better life, to turn around and try and screw with the white person over here, or the Spanish person over here, or anyone, anywhere. It's like, at the end of the day, we all want to be happy. We all want to be comfortable. We all want to be loved. We all want to eat good food. We all want to do the things that we enjoy. And it's like, we want to be able to do that without fear, without hesitation, without any reason why we can't. We're not trying to get back at anybody. It's like, I think people understand that that's not going to fix anything. Us getting back isn't going to, make us, we're not trying to be better, is what I'm getting at. And it's weird. It's like, I'm trying to be better than the situation that I am in, and people, prior to me may have been in, but I'm not looking to go then and squish somebody once I get a leg up.
No.
That's, and I think it's a lot of fear. It's so many things. It's so layered. But to bring it back to cannabis, it's like, I'm so grateful for the plant. Now, had you met me 5 years ago, so anti-smoking. Even knowing the people that I know who smoke, and it's like, no, these are upstanding individuals, and they're, they have good jobs, and they're smart, and they're this, that, and the other. So, breaking all the DARE stigmas. DARE is like a drug awareness program for kids in school in America, and I don't know if they still have it, but when I was a kid, we had like a police officer who would come in and talk to us about drugs and stuff. And so, I had those stigmas in the back of my head. Cannabis I would totally credit cannabis, specifically the strain Sweet Tooth, for like helping me break out of my creative block, for allowing me to sit with uncomfortable things that I know about myself but chose not to acknowledge, to question things that I maybe not always question, but to test ideas and thoughts in a way that I would not have allowed myself before.
Same here.
Credit cannabis for that, for sure, 100%. And, that's why legalization is a thing. I feel like I don't think we would solve like the world's problems, right? A lot of people have made very good points. Specifically, some people that I know out in Oklahoma, they're like, no, we know people who like smoke and they're still racist. They're still misogynistic. So it's like, let's not act like this is a miracle cure-all, but have to give it its props for, what it's done for me personally. It's really just like opened up my mind to that. And I'm going to get slack for this, but, it allows me to empathize with people that some people say I shouldn't. It's like, I could understand why someone who's white, who may have led a privileged or sheltered life, doesn't have a lot of Black friends or a lot of Black interaction, or the Black interaction they have is skewed, or, again, that token Black person, the one Black person that's got to be there to fill the quota. I can see why it's hard to admit. I can see why it's hard to accept. I can see why it's hard to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, because it's like you don't ever want to have to experience anything bad, but it's like, I need you to understand that that's what's going on right now. Like, that's, people need to just experience that, it's like, just step out of yourself for a second. It's like, I think there's a lot of people have echo chambers, other people telling them what they want to hear or saying the same things that they're saying. So they're not really, I talk to people, and who did you talk to? Because if you talk to a bunch of people who all believe the same thing, you're not learning anything new. You're just getting, false affirmations of things that you believe or think are right, or whatever the case may be. So
that's what we do, right? As people, we're like, we have so many biases, we just confirm what we believe, and we want to stay in that little like bubble of belief without having to question it, because questioning shit is hard,
It's hard, it's heavy, and it's a lot of work. And it's one of those things where people ask all the time. It's like another meme that's going around on social media. It's, what do you do when you're confronted with information that may cause you to question what may have been a solidly held belief or idea? What do you do when you turn around and you look and you see that the Black people around you aren't acting like the rappers in the videos, or, the people in the cop show, or, in any movie where the Black person is a villain, a gangster, whatever the case may be? What do you do when you realize that you met someone who's Black, who's just like you, and the only thing different between you is that your skin color is different? Like, me and my best friend, legit, so many things in common, to the point where it's like, I feel like for all of our even religious differences, the biggest difference between us is the color of our skin. Because it's weird. It's like, she's a version of me. I'm a version of her, Yeah,
like it's such a nonsense difference.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those things that's definitely a man-made concept, obviously. The idea that because someone's a different color or a different race, they can't feel the way that you feel. And you could say that's true to an extent because of experiences. But again, all the experience and things that may make a Black person act a certain way, you know, or make a white person act a certain way. It's like all of that's learned. None of that is factual, you know, like that's not coming from inside. That's things that have been taught or projected on us. And so it's like, I'm big about like intersectionality when it comes to Black because it's highlighting, it's like, yeah, I'm Black and I watch anime and I watch, you know, like I love Sailor Moon and I love kawaii things. And, you know, and then on the other hand, I'm like a boho beach bum / hippie / if I needed to put on a blazer and, you know, walk into a boardroom and have a meeting, I could do that too. And I'm a makeup artist and, you know, like I'm all of these things. And it's unfortunate. Like I was reading something recently, people were saying like in 2020 that we still have the first Black anything. It's like, we shouldn't be a novelty anymore. There's so many of us and we have so many skill sets and are so, you know, varied, again, like any other group of people. It's like, we shouldn't hear those. It's cool because it's like, all right, finally we're making some headway, but don't let that one Black person that was the first to do something be the only Black person, the token Black person. And also we need it to be less of a sensational thing because part of that, like, oh, the first Black person to do this, the first Black person to do that. It's sensationalizing this person and their skill, not to say that they're not great or excellent in whatever it is that they're doing and that it's not noteworthy that they're the first Black person to do it. I feel like sometimes it's pushed and promoted and seeded with messages that this person's the exception to the rule or exception to the group or to the race for what Black people can and can't do.
I mean, Obama is more known for being the first Black president and being like one of the presidents that has really gone through with the Medicare for All, for example. Was that the name? Medicare for All?
Yeah, exactly. It was the Affordable Care Act, I think, was the formal name of it. And, you know, they started calling it Obamacare and, you know, they villainized it. And I had people, you know, friends who had, you know, family members that worked in the medical industry. And they were like, yeah, because Obamacare, you know, my dad, he's not making as much money because, you know, and the insurance. And it's like, you're mad your dad's not making more money, but people are getting the healthcare that they need. And I'm like, the fact that you don't hear what's wrong with that is just like, what? I'm sorry, your dad's not making as much money. It's one of those, it's a very fine line. It's like, you can't tell someone what is enough for them. But I think there's a general understanding that you need at least this to be comfortable. You need at least this to be able to pay your bills and, you know, not have excessive amounts of stress. And I think maybe there's not a number you could put on it, but there's like a criteria. If you can do this, this, and this without having to worry about where your next meal is coming from or your next check, or then you've got what you need. At what point does someone look at themselves and saying, I have excess and I could still have less and still have enough? You know, it's like, I'm sorry your dad lost money from his practice because of Obamacare. But at the same time, it's like, what's worse? Him not making as much money, but still making money and having a job and being able to support you all. But now people are getting the health care that
millions of people as well. Yeah.
It's weird. And then to have people, case in point, people benefit from it, but still like try to downplay it. There was an argument online on Facebook and somebody was talking about, you know, the Affordable Care Act and how they're trying to get rid of it. And there's this person going off in the comments. And this person's like, you know, they need to get rid of Obamacare, and they're saying like, yeah, I have the Affordable Care Act and I get this, that, and the other. And so everyone around them is like, do you know? I wish the world could see my face right now because I swear how it's everyone's like just this wide-eyed, like jaws slack. Like, did you just say that? This person didn't realize that the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare were the same thing. And so this person's going on and on about how bad Obamacare is. And everybody in the comments is like, go look up what you have. Go look up what you're benefiting from. And they were trying to skew it to say that he was trying to only help Black people. He was doing things in legislation to only help Black people. And people are like, yeah, the proper name for it is the Affordable Care Act, but it's been nicknamed Obamacare. And in attempts to try and sully it, because people, some people felt the way they did about Obama. And so once it's like that person just disappeared, and I was like, they went to look up, and I was like, I can only imagine what their face looked like. And now I wonder, I'm like, did that person change their mind once they were afforded that new information that they are also benefiting from this? And I'm like, Black Lives Matter and people, Black people wanting equality, that's for us, but it will help everyone else because it'll set a standard. If everyone's at the same playing field, then we can say no one should be allowed to fall below this. No one should be allowed to live below this. And it helps everyone because there are poor white people in the world who are, at a disadvantage for the reasons that they're at a disadvantage. Wealth is a way that people are discriminated against as well outside of race. And so it's like, helping Black people is only going to help other people. Helping people is only going to help other people. So it's weird. It's just so weird.
Yes.
So weird.
Babe, I am so happy we had this long, amazing conversation. Seriously.
So am I.
So you have to go in and check out Katie on her Instagram.
Please come see me.
I will link your Instagram and your website, obviously, in the description so you can find her.
Thank you so much.
So nice to talk to you, darling, and have an awesome day. And thank you so much for participating as well. It was really nice to have you on.
Thank you for having me, and you have a great day as well. And, we'll be in touch. I'll be in your comments and your DMs and whatnot.
Yes. Have a lovely day, darling. Mwah.
You too.
Big
Bye.
kisses. Bye, babe. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to my social channels and rate this podcast. And if you would like to support me a little bit extra, it would really mean the world to me. So check out my Patreon profile that I linked in the episode description. It's all thanks to your support that I can continue talking, writing, recording, and making more cannabis content for you and our amazing community. Have an awesome day and lots of love.